Welcome to Tuning Tuesday, episode
31.
31.
Man, we're getting old. I'm surprised they're not bored of us yet. We don't have that much interesting stuff to talk about. We just talk about Ford stuff.
We just talk about Ford stuff. They keep coming back, though.
Yeah, they must like us for something. Maybe it's our little raffle prize stuff that we're doing now.
That's a fairly new thing, though.
It is.
Yeah.
Got to keep it exciting. So, do we want to start with this, or we want to start with some other stuff?
Let's save the goodies for a little bit later. How's that sound, Carrie?
That's fine.
Okay.
Man, the week's flown by. It's another Tuning Tuesday.
It feels like it's practically Friday already again.
I was out yesterday, involved with some bald eagle and some bartle skeet, and, and all
Mountain
kinds
Dew
of
and Papa John's.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, so it was a crazy day over in Tampa at Cletus's.
Shit.
We made some horsepower, a few.
A couple. Two of them.
Yeah. Cletus has got this Crown Vic swap, and it's a little bit thrown together right now. It's going to get finished up. I think its real big outing is going to be the Summer Nats in Australia.
Oh, he's bringing it to Australia?
It's getting shipped to Australia.
What?
But Summer Nats is not till January.
Mm-hmm.
Now you do have to ship it like 2 months ahead of time to make it there on a
reasonable timeline.
Yeah, on the boat, the slow boat to China, basically. So I'm sure he's going to do plenty of burnouts and have lots of fun with it here in the States before it ships out. But that's a project we've been supporting. I think Cletus came by 3 weeks ago or so, and we got him some hardware to make some power, and it all kind of came together and made a lot. That was my first time tuning a standalone.
How do you like that compared to stock ECU stuff?
The live tuning aspect of the standalone was really nice. Like, getting all the layout and all the data that I want to see was a pain in the butt because you got to configure your gauges, configure your data logging.
But did they have any type of like histogram style stuff or any decent data logging, or were you using like Megalog Viewer or LiveLink or something like that to grab data?
So they had a gauge type display, like a dashboard, and then they had a strip chart, which is what we're used to.
Yeah.
You know, with LiveLink or Megalog. Histograms, I did not get into that. I know there's a lot of very fast race cars that run Holly Dominator, you know, down in like the 7-second, 6-second quarter-mile range. So I know it works, but, you know, getting used to something like that's a whole nother story.
Especially when you're used to dealing with a stock ECU. And you're, all right, I need this table to make this change, and you're trying to find it in the aftermarket software.
But, yeah, we got it all done and made some horsepower. Started out at 708 to the wheels, which Cletus was absolutely ecstatic about. And we just kept turning it up from there.
I'm glad he had a good first experience with Fords.
Yeah.
Because from what I've seen in his videos, the swap hasn't really been hard for him. And a lot of the factory parts work with Crown Vic versus GT500, so that was kind of interesting.
I mean, I was talking to his mechanic, James, and they're planning to have AC in this car, power steering, working radio, horn, power windows, everything.
That's awesome.
With 4 Kirkies to ride around in.
And do America stuff in?
Yeah, pretty much. Drink Bartle Skeet and do America
so
stuff.
So what is Bartle Skeet? I came in on the
Mountain Dew.
The back side of it. It's Mountain Dew?
Yes.
Oh, man. So do we want to say what it ended up making at the end of the day?
I think they should go watch Cletus's video.
Okay.
We could probably link them to that.
Yeah.
I've already put a link on our wall as well, so they can go there and they can watch it on our wall.
Are we getting any questions coming in, Carrie?
You do have questions coming in. Are you ready for them?
You want to do some questions?
Yeah, I'm down with that.
Okay, Nick says, how would I go about getting a baseline tune with the F-150 Coyote with Mustang cams, 82mm pulley, and ID 1050X injectors with SCT tuner on Ford Racing control pack?
I assume he's talking about a 15-up Ford Racing control pack, because that's what they're selling nowadays. All you would have to do is order it. It'd be level X on the website. We need to know what pumps you got in the car, what fuel system, like the entirety of the fuel system, pumps, regulator, what base pressure is set to, whether or not it's vacuum boost reference. All that stuff's on the form, but just go on the website, order up a level X tune, and then make sure you're very specific in what's done to the car and what you're hoping to do with it.
So I want to dig a little deeper. He asked for a base tune. So it sounds like he just got this car truck together, and you know, he wants to get
it's a 14.
14. Okay. But it's got a Ford Racing Control. Oh, a Ford Racing Control Pack in it though. 14 engine.
He's got to make sure that if he has 14 cams, phasers, timing chain stuff, that he has a control pack for 14. You can physically get it to work on a 15-up control pack. There's just some weird things about it.
Yeah. So that's a good footnote. 11 to 14 Coyote and 15 to 17 Coyote are different. And a lot of people run the 15 to 17 engine with an 11 to 14 control pack.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, going the other way gets kind of weird.
You want to kind of match your cams and all that stuff with the control pack model.
In a perfect world.
Yeah.
So he's built this setup. Needs a base tune, wants to step into, I guess, our remote tuning process at this point. And like Joe said, with the level of modifications, that's a level X tune, which starts at 549, I believe. And it's always, keep in mind, it's always a good idea. This setup sounds pretty good, but it's always a good idea to consult us before you actually build the car and see what injectors and MAF we want to run in a setup like that. You know, tell us your power levels, and we can make a good recommendation for what you're going to need. You know, even down to like fuel system requirements. You know, if you're going to run corn, then we need at least twin pumps.
I've gotten level X orders for single 320 AEM pumps on a boosted setup, and it's like, what do you want to do with this?
He said, Nick came back and said it's a running car, just upgrading to the blower.
Okay. That makes it a lot easier.
Makes it easier in some ways, harder in other ways.
Yeah, I would say another good idea is to send us a picture of your engine bay so that we can make sure that MAF and all that stuff is oriented in a good position. There's not going to be any issues there, because I've seen where people modify MAF housings for some of our cold airs, where like they'll take a JLT 123 and it doesn't quite angle the way they want it to, so they'll cut the tube and then put like a 45 on it, like right before the MAF or right after the MAF, and you'll get an email back from them like, hey, my car doesn't start on this file. Yeah, well, we're basically starting from scratch because you now have something that is a relatively known data point, and now it's a new data point that we got to build a whole transfer function for because you've changed the characterization of it.
I got one of those yesterday. Hey, I've got a PMAS no tune required mass air housing. I'm using that with my VMP Stage 2 Supercharger kit on my 2015 Mustang. And we don't sell that combination, so it sounded like it was purchased used. And all right, okay, the PMAS 120 housings, you know, I had to tell them the PMAS 120 housing is fine. Use the stock mass air. Now that you have a blower, we're going to calibrate it. We don't need a no tune required cold air with a blower. So that was important. And But basically, you know, give us all the information on your setup. You get a base tune ordered. We send you a starting point file. We send you data logging instructions. We get data back and forth. Our service includes, our level 3 and our level X includes 5 data log reviews and adjustments. And at that point, you know, any well put together setup is going to be dialed in by us at that point. And you're off to making horsepower and having a good time.
Hell yeah.
Dave Macy says, happy Tuesday, guys. Thank you all for signing my shirt.
Oh, man.
You're welcome.
And he's got a joke for you. He says, will VMP do any more tuning with the Holly EFI? Just kidding, and nice work on Justin nice work, Justin, on Neighbor.
Nice.
Well, that's actually a valid comment, Dave. So Rebecca's new race car, she is looking at using the Holly EFI system on it.
Oh,
so she was with me, and we were kind of both learning it together. She was in the back seat of Neighbor the whole time.
In the back Kirky?
Yeah, in the back Kirky, watching the screen, and we were talking about, you know, what we were doing tuning-wise to make it happen. But she's really interested in tuning her own race car, and with you know, with both of us learning a new standalone setup, that'll be a great time.
Luke Bonzani says, hello, guys. He's just chiming in, saying hello.
Hey.
He's kind of like one of our regular customers.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, I've seen his name come up quite a bit.
Yeah.
Corey says, hey, guys, 03 Crown Vic with a 5.4 2-valve, TVS heads, and Torque Tech intake. Would the Gen 3 GT500 produce more power than the Gen 3 Cobra blower, or would my heads restrict flow to that to not matter?
So he's got TFS heads, which TFS heads are pretty badass, right?
Yeah, with the right cams.
With the right cams, I mean, they're up there in 4-valve flow territory, I think.
I think they're in between 3-valve and 4-valve flow in terms of flow potential. So they're pretty good.
Way better than 2-valve heads.
Way better.
We'll put it that way.
I'd say since the Crown Victoria is already passenger or driver side inlet, go with a GT500 blower if any way possible.
So here's the story on that, and we'll touch on that a little bit later too, is the GT500 had a much larger engine bay than the 03 Cobra did. So just everything Ford did on the 03 Cobra was like supersized on the GT500. And it's the same way with our blower. The inlet flows better, the throttle body bolt pattern is bigger. I mean, the intercooler brick in the GT500 lower intake and hopefully in the Torque Tech kit is bigger.
I'm not sure what their intercooler size is.
Yeah.
I know that the only part that's going to get funny is dry belt alignment, because that Torque Tech lower intake kit is set up for a Cobra style belt drive.
It is, yeah, it is.
So
It's right.
That might be one of those things where maybe if we get trade-in units, we might be able to work something out with them where we put a Cobra front drive assembly on a GT500 head unit, but then he's going to have to figure out the spacing for the adapter plate.
I would tell you a couple good things. All VMP superchargers use the same hub, so you can put a Cobra pulley on a GT500 Coyote blower. And if that lines up with your belt system, depending on which belt system you end up using. And we've got some spacers that are almost 1/8 inch. You know, you could stack maybe 1, maybe 2 spacers at the very most. So there's a little bit of play there, but you'd have to figure out the belt drive.
Yeah. Kind of a very multifaceted
Yeah,
question.
it's a very custom swap.
Chris says, I have an 11 GT500 with a 2.5 pulley, JLT 123, and 67 millimeter throttle body. If I wanted to switch back to my factory throttle body, would I need a revised tune?
Bum, bum, bum. The car will run and drive fine on a twin 60 throttle body with or without twin 67 data.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty, the Twin 67 like drives and tunes so well. Just go back to the Twin 60, you'll be good.
Ray McGuire says, tuner came back and said my intercooler pump appears to not be working. Wanted it burped. Everything is good, no air in lines. Anything else I should check before sending another slow rev and watt data log? In Montana, minimum altitude is 3,300. Would that affect anything?
If you don't see coolant flow in the reservoir, and by coolant flow I mean think you put a hose in a bucket. If you don't see hose in a bucket level circulation in your reservoir, you either have airlock or your pump's bad. 9 times out of 10, it's airlock. It's very rare that I ever see a pump out of the box being bad. And an easy way to tell is to put your hand on the pump. When you supply power to it, you should feel it vibrating at a relatively high frequency, so it's going to feel like it's humming. And if you feel it humming, chances are it's just an airlock, and you're not going to visibly see an airlock unless every single line is clear and the intakes on the intercooler are clear and the intakes on the heat exchanger are clear.
He says have flow.
Okay, if you have flow, then you don't really have an air pocket issue. You should be good to data log it.
And the system's going to perform fine at altitude.
Yeah.
That's not a big deal.
I was looking at data logs for my car at 5,000 feet today. I was like,
Nice.
this airflow looks a little low for a Gen 3, and I looked up the zip code, and it's 5,000 feet in Utah. I'm like, all right, that explains that.
Which, we just pulley down for that.
Yeah.
Corey says, what's a good standalone for 14 Shelby looking to AEM?
It's hard to recommend a standalone, being that I've never worked with one and you've only worked with one.
So we've been researching standalones for the past year while Rebecca's been building her new car, and it really depends on this is a question outside the scope of the show, but if you know what you need a standalone to do you just need to do engine? Do you need to have it, run some transmission functionality? Do you need to have it do data acquisition for suspension? How much is going on with the car? You can begin to start to choose something.
Is this a 6-second car quarter? Is this a 8-second car quarter?
Yeah, that is a big difference in standalone world between those two speeds.
And what level of data logging you need in terms of, I guess, auxiliary inputs and stuff like that.
Alexander says, I have a 13 GT with a Roush 79 millimeter and E85. Would I need a new tune if I install a 75 millimeter?
Do you need one? Not necessarily, but if you're going to go that far down in pulley size, I'd at least like to look at a data log to make sure that your fuel system's keeping up and that your injectors are keeping up.
I mean, measured air fuel still being around 0.8, 0.82 lambda at 7,000, 7,500. That's important. And even if it is maintaining the measured air fuel, is the short term, within 5 or 10%.
Is the short term the thing that's saving it?
Yeah. Is your short term, saving it, or does it have enough fuel pressure there to begin with? So that's all the stuff that tuners look at in data logs to make sure things are where we want them.
Jason says thumbs up to the 800 plus horsepower to the Crown Vic project.
Oh, he gave it away.
Oh,
yep,
man.
Thank you. It was awesome. I didn't know that it was going to do it there at the end. We made 771, and we pulled some tricks out of the hat and went a little further.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And that was stock manifolds, and was that stock GT500 cats?
Oh yeah, stock GT500 cats.
So did he cut the mid pipe on the GT500 and just make it work on the Crown Vic?
They just they just needed something to put on the car. This thing was kind of squirreled together.
Kind of like test pipe style?
Yeah, so they're like, well, we have an X pipe off the Mustang, The Mustang was mangled. I should have taken a picture of it, but the X pipe was good. So they just put that whole mid piping cats under the Crown Vic, and we ran it.
That works.
Yeah.
Nick says, I got my TVS tune Sunday, thank you. I'm going by your suggestion and get it on the dyno for logging wideband AF at watt. How quick can you guys review data and get it back to the shop doing the log?
How quick can we? Very quickly. How quickly is it probably going to happen? Probably not that quickly, just due to the backlog we have. It really depends on what level of service you paid for and what you're expecting. Because if you got a tune from us for a blower kit, that's kind of like a...
Yeah, we got level 1, 2, 3, and X, and then we've got remote tune sessions you can purchase. I was having this conversation with a customer too. So if he got a stage 3 kit, that technically comes with level 3 tuning, but support's not real time. It's you send us a data log, we get you an adjustment within a reasonable amount of time.
Whereas most other supercharger companies, here's the tune you get.
Yeah,
if you need anything changed, have someone build you a new tune file.
I mean, we are going above and beyond being a supercharger manufacturer and a tuner. We want to make sure our hardware's out there performing good. But so if he's going to the dyno shop, he should already have idle and slow rev logs done, right?
And if possible, at least 1 watt log on the street before you even go to the dyno.
Just to make sure everything's working, because we don't want anybody to ever have a wasted dyno trip. And
occasionally we'll get those emails where, no, you didn't give us a heads up. It's 4 o'clock on a Friday. You go to the dyno, you don't get a response till Monday when we come back, and you're like, what the hell, man? I put my car in the dyno. Why couldn't you guys give me a tune? We got a lot of stuff going on.
And we have a way to accommodate those people. If you schedule a remote tune session on the website, we we get with you, block out time, and then when you're on the dyno, we got a tuner there live on the keyboard to make updates, and that service is $3.99. And we just get with us, we'll look at our schedule, make everything come together. If your setup's like fairly close to being dialed in though, and you just need a couple hits on a dyno to check horsepower and air fuel, then you can always just do that, report back to us, we'll get you a log, or get you a revision with your logs.
Jason says, I have a 16 performance pack car. I never plan on tracking the car, just running from a light or on the highway. He's asking if a centrifugal blower is better for the car with the 373 gears.
Bum, bum, bum.
A blower is better than no blower.
Yeah. I'm of the opinion that the way that our supercharger kit's set up, for a daily driver you're wanting to do something like you're doing, our blower is a great blower for a setup like that, especially on pump gas. It's going to take you as far as you need to go on pump gas, on stock motor, all that stuff. And putting a ProCharger on the car, they're not bad blowers. They work just fine. You're not going to get the low-end punch that you're going to get with a TVS, being that you have 373 gears, the low end punch is going to be amplified by the 373 gears, but I don't think that the ProCharger is necessarily a better blower. I think it's just a different way of getting to a peak horsepower goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different way. You know, even with a positive displacement style blower, you still have your right foot to modulate the power output. And I would rather have the torque there and choose not to use it than not have the torque there at all.
Yep.
John wants to know, he says, hi guys, PMAS versus JLT for the Gen 3.
Bum, bum, bum.
We're getting a lot of those questions
The
today.
controversial question nation today.
Yeah. They both work good.
At the end of the day, power-wise, do I think either one's going to make more power than the other, being within a reasonable, like, say one's the 120 and one's the 123? Do I think there's going to be a big discrepancy in power? No. Do I think that they're both going to get the job done? Yes. So I like to put it to people as, which one do you visually like looking at more? Because from an end user standpoint, they're both going to get the same job done. The only time I see any semblance of a difference is from how they calibrate one-to-one. So you get a PMOS 120 and your MAF frequency at 600 horsepower is, we'll call it like 9.0 or 9.1. MAF frequency on a JLT 123 is like 8.8 to 9.0. So it's like the data I get back from the car looks different with the two cold airs, but the feel and everything else from a user standpoint is no different. So which one do you want to use? Which one do you like the looks of more? Use whichever one you want. They'll both get you there.
We sell both of them.
Yeah.
Zach says, what post blower IAT does your truck normally see cruising on a 90-degree day? What is a normal range of temperature above ambient for a PD blower setup on a stock 5.0, be it truck or Mustang? Thanks.
What's a normal range? That's a very broad question.
110, 120. But yeah, it's a very broad question.
Because if you're 90-degree ambient, what was your driving condition prior to reading IAT2? How long was that driving condition present before reading IAT2? I'd say normal's anywhere from 110 to 150, because you can get out of the store, hop back in the truck after driving it 20 minutes to the store, and your IATs are 145, 150 when you start it. But then you get 5 miles down the road and they're down to 130. You get another 20 miles down the road, they're down to 120. People want like a definite range where it's going to vary 10 degrees, and it doesn't. It's highly dependent on the conditions. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I mean, yeah, it depends on how you're driving the vehicle, how much you're beating on it. You know, it's going to be down in that low 100-degree range.
How much soak time you have.
Yeah.
Ray Shaw saying, hi guys.
Hey.
Hola.
LX347 CID03 says Cobra with VMP, 1000 cc injectors and BAP. Fuel pump duty cycle is at around 40%. So if going to E85, why need a return system?
Sure
don't
will.
I have enough in there based on that duty cycle?
No, that duty cycle that you're calling out on a...
So he's 40%, so you double that to 80%. Oh, he doesn't know that it has to be doubled.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Oh, shit.
So he's looking at fuel pump duty cycle and he sees 0.4 and he's like, oh, that's just 40%. No, that's 80% because it has to be doubled. Yeah,
actually, that's how the Ford logic actually defines it as a half of 100%, because there's fault state logics, like 0.75 is off and 1.0 is off for an FPDM.
I think key on, engine off, it'll default to 0.75.
0.75, okay.
And then you start the car, you'll be at like anywhere, if you're over 20% at idle on a Cobra with stock pumps, one of your pumps is bad.
Yeah.
If you're between like 15 and 19, your pumps are good, but that's actually 30% to 40% duty cycle just sitting there at idle.
So, and I think we should take this a step further. You got to double the number, so you're already at 80%. E85 is 30 to 40% more fuel than gasoline.
And that's not a direct translation of add 30% to your fuel pump duty cycle.
Right.
That's 30% total fuel mass to achieve the same stoic point.
Yeah, we don't know what that curve looks like, as you go from 80 to 100%. Additionally, especially on the Cobras, you really need a return style system because the computer can't keep up with transients, and you get the infamous hesitation.
Yeah.
Everything is better with return style.
At least on Cobras.
Yeah.
The GT500 and Coyote stuff tends to work pretty well on transients.
We can make 700-800 rear wheel on a GT500, yeah. That's a faster computer.
Yeah.
It's like taking I don't know. Anyways, it's another story. More questions.
PJ McMillan says...
What's up, PJ?
Yep, PJ says, as a matter of fact, he's got a comment here for you, Joe. He says, keep these coming, guys. But Joe, go work on my revision for the new intake. Just kidding. Thanks for all your help. The car's moving out. He says, hoping to make north of 850 to the wheel with this new intake.
He makes 830 now.
So he's pretty excited.
Nice.
It's like a 2017 GT manual.
Nice.
Yep.
Very nice.
The gentleman you just answered the question for says, thanks.
Yep.
Peyton says, when looking at short-term fuel trims, what do the numbers stand for? What are ideal fuel trim numbers? And thanks for the info. Learned a lot from watching these Tuning Tuesdays.
So should we differentiate 96 to 10 and 11 to 14 in terms of what you see in short-term fuel trims and what it correlates to? So 96 to 10, if you see a fuel trim of 0.90, that is not pulling out 10% fuel. It's adding 10% fuel.
You got to go in your brain
And
and
flip
when
it.
you're tuning stuff, and flip it.
Yep. And then your long terms, a positive long-term fuel trim on the EEC5 stuff is adding fuel. A negative from 1.0, so a 0.8 is pulling fuel.
Yeah. Everything's centered around 1.0 on fuel trims. The way that all the stuff we use is logs them. Some, like little scan tools and stuff, they might translate it differently. And then you put on your 11 up tuning hat, and
Up is
everything
up and down
normal.
is down. It's not invert axis.
Yes.
So just try and keep that in mind when you're looking at fuel trims. 10 and down, long terms being over 1.0 is adding fuel. Short terms being above 1.0 is pulling fuel.
And to kind of go into his original question, like within 5 or 10%, plus or minus is the biggest correction we want to see on long terms and short terms. I mean, you can have a combination of long and short terms, but we're trying to shoot to have that dialed in.
Luke says, can you discuss how often the oil in the superchargers need to be changed, what oil to use, how much oil it takes, and what method to use to take the old oil out and put the new oil in?
So
I don't know if we can talk about that, Joe.
We've never done that before. Actually, from a maintenance item, I've never had to change blower oil on any of our superchargers. But from people want, like say someone comes in with Roush blower, back when we were doing the case swaps, the easiest way to drain fluid out of these blowers, because there's such a small amount of it, is to pull the front nose drive off and let it drain.
You take the supercharger.
See those
Rip
tiny
the-
little 6 bolts? Those little guys right there?
Can we get out our magnifying glass?
Exactly.
See these 6 little silver things here, and then you take them out, and all the oil falls out. So I can speak to some of the intervals, the type, and the volume of oil in a positive displacement VMP, Roush, Eaton supercharger. It's a very thin oil. I heard it's like 10 weight. Technically, the Eaton specification is NYE 605, NYE 605.
And it is very expensive.
It costs $500 per 5-gallon pail.
Yeah.
And I think since we've been selling superchargers, we've bought 2 pails.
Yeah.
And then we've bottled it into conveniently pre-measured bottles for you.
I know the guy that did that.
Yeah, you did the first batch, like when
Yeah.
you first started working here.
Yeah.
It's this giant syringe.
Yeah. Very precisely marked.
Yes. So technically the fill on a 2.3 liter is 140 milliliters. You can actually run one 150. At the end of the day, you want, and that's basically 5.5 to 6 ounces. You want the fill level to be just below the hole on the front nose drive.
And we get that question every now and then. Hey, I pulled the plug on the front of my blower and no oil came out.
Yeah.
Did you tip it over? Because that's the only way it's going to come out. It's not filled above the above the fill hole.
There's actually like a lot of heat and pressure that occurs inside that front case, so the airspace is there to cushion it. You would not ever want to completely fill the supercharger, like stand it upside down and then fill
You'll
it
have a bad
full.
time.
Yeah,
It's kind of like filling up your engine crankcase with oil. You just fill it till it starts coming out and start it. See how well that goes for you.
Oh man. So yeah, we sell the supercharger oil on our website. Literally, the part number is like SC oil, and it's $29.99. It's got a little squirt thing on the top of it like ketchup, and you just squirt it in there, and that's that. But it's not a bad idea to check the level. If you've ran the thing hard for like tens of thousands of miles, it should be just below. You can stick a wire or a Q-tip in there, but there's not a good reason to change it. Most people are upgrading or porting or modifying their supercharger before they ever need to actually change it.
Yeah, and the recommended interval is what? The
100.
OE side is 100,000. If you're going to
100,000.
beat on the car more, maybe a little bit less.
Yeah, maybe
But
50, 25, but yeah.
yeah, Alex had his on his car forever, and we didn't have any issues with lubrication or the oil quality in that one.
Yeah, he had a lot of miles on his car, just like my truck has had a lot of miles on the blower.
Chuck Stern says 3 to 4 shift under watt. It feels almost like I hit a limiter just before the shift. Is that torque limiting or something that should be logged and checked into?
Depends on which controller you're talking about. Usually if it feels like you're hitting a limiter, you're usually hitting a limiter. Send us a log of what you're referring to and we'll take a peek.
Yeah, we can tell what it is from a log. The log should have
as
torque.
long as it's logged properly.
Yeah, it should be one of our configuration files, which is going to have throttle angle, torque source. That's a big.
Excel pedal position.
Pedal position is nice to have.
Because I had some logs coming in from a customer the other day where throttle was doing like a zigzag at watt, and I'm like, "Is your foot on the floor?" And he's like, "Yeah, all the way down." And I'm like, grab Excel pedal position D and grab a log for me. And Excel pedal position D was doing this the whole log. And then I'm like, all right, do me a favor, take the floor mat out of your car, then go watt. Hold it down to the floor. And the next log I got, throttle all the way open the whole time. And I'm like, all right, now we're good.
Kind of neat how that works.
Yeah. You hold the throttle open and it stays open? It's so weird.
Terry Reese says, what do you feel about lightened flywheels for 14 GT500? Will crank relearn be required? Vehicle is a 373 and 3,700 pounds, currently at near 700 wheel. Next upgrade is the Gen 3 and ID1000s with dual booster. Does a clutch swap with lighter flywheel necessitate a data logging, or is it preferred?
Clutch swap should not necessitate data logging unless you feel that you possibly have clutch slip, and that's something that you can data log and figure out without sending it to us. If you say it's been 6 months since you got a tune and you want us to take a peek at a data log to determine whether or not you have clutch slip, we can do that. We're starting to get to the point where stuff like that isn't going to be free. And I think, frankly, we're already at that point, but we've kind of just let stuff like that go for so long that it's finally becoming a problem where so many people just want us to look at logs that we have to set that level of expectation of customer support.
Yeah.
And we'll be looking to do that soon. But what I'm getting at here is you can do a calculation of RPM over output shaft speed, and that's something you can do in LiveLink, a user configured parameter, I think it's called. And then just look at the gear ratios on Wikipedia, wherever you want to get gear ratios from, and make sure that the gear ratio when you're at watt isn't separating. To the end of your question about crank relearn, anytime you change any rotating mass attached to the engine, you need to do a crank relearn. So if you do a front balancer pulley, you swap from stock to an ATI, you need to do a crank relearn. If you do a pressure plate because one of your diaphragms in your pressure plate went bad, or your diaphragm in your pressure plate went bad, but you kept the clutch disc and you kept the flywheel because you like to party like that, do a crank relearn. If you do a clutch, do a crank relearn. You do a flywheel, do a crank relearn.
And that's on 2011 up only.
Yep. We could get into how the other logic works for determining misfires, but that's another conversation. So yeah, do a crank relearn and
drive your car and enjoy it. I mean,
exactly.
the lighter
Make
mass.
sure you bleed the clutch properly.
Yes. The lighter mass flywheel is, you may have to give it a little more gas to take off, but I don't really think it's going to have a big effect on your driving experience. Most people adapt and pick that up right away.
Yeah, and generally speaking, the amount that's going to change the moment of inertia or the kinetic energy involved with the torque calculations in the ECU isn't enough to actually cause problems.
Oh yeah, good
but
point.
Unless you go into the whole, I put a 3-pound flywheel in my car, so now we really have to start looking at the torque calculation, because at idle, your engine inertia is significantly lower than it was stock, because you just took something that weighed like a stock steel flywheel is probably 27, 30 pounds. And now it weighs a third of, not even a third of that, a tenth of that.
Right.
But yeah, largely speaking, just enjoy your car. Do a crank relearn.
So Dorian says, okay, I've let a few weeks go without asking the question, so here it is. Joe's truck. Updates.
I got wheels for it.
And
I need tires for
2018
it.
Boosted GT. Updates.
You got wheels and tires for your truck.
Yeah.
Sweet. Did you get it in the shop for suspension yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Well, I have the springs, the spring isolators, and the new front struts with the Beltec kit. I just have to physically take them to my old shop, assemble them on the wall-mounted
Oh yeah.
strut compressor or spring compressor, because the spring compressor that we have here won't do F-150 springs.
It's too wimpy.
Yeah, so I got to bring it to a shop with a wall-mounted one, assemble it all there, and then I'm going to bring parts here and install the rest of the lowering kit here. Just didn't want to have one of those things where I get the truck here, get it apart, and then I have to go drive to a shop locally and hope that they'll let me use the wall-mounted spring compressor.
Right.
But soon, Dorian, soon.
We got to get a Gen 3 on Joe's truck too as well, and go rip off some times. I mean, I guess that's kind of, Joe's getting his wheels, he's getting his suspension, because this is a two-wheel drive truck, so it's not just put it in 4 and go. There's a little more method to the madness.
Speaking of which, how do you like your hunk hooks on your truck? The
They're
Ventus?
sticky as shit.
A lot better than those Goodyears you had on it?
Yes, they're very, very sticky.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the truck has slipped a drivetrain component
Yeah.
and only has front-wheel drive right now.
And it's not the transmission.
It's not the transmission. It's
Yeah.
not the transfer case.
And it's not the rear end.
And it's not the rear end.
We'll let you do the rest of the math there.
Yeah. So the truck will be operational here shortly. But it's funny how Rebecca got 2 or 3 clean passes at American Muscle, and then we went to unload it off the trailer, and it wouldn't move. So easy enough to fix.
Yeah.
But 18 Mustang, we haven't had a whole lot of time to mess with that. So
It's got cobwebs on it outside.
yeah, it's we're gonna be hammering on that soon. We do have some more, as soon as we get through these questions, we do have some much awaited results from another platform. So we'll get into discussing the ins and outs of that.
Which we have about 15 minutes left of the show, so
Time flies.
time flies.
Let me do our contest real quick. We can
Sure.
do that while we're talking about Cobra stuff.
Uh-huh. So we have a contest today to win a $100 VMP gift certificate. So those of you guys who are tuned in right now, I see there's about 50 people on YouTube, and we have about 40 people on Facebook. So what they have up there, oh, you're flashing $100 at us?
You're going to get this in the form of a gift certificate, though.
A piece of plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
plastic
for our
$100
website.
For the website. And if you look there on the table, if you guys want to pick it up and show it from the side so they can kind of see.
Hi, my name is Vanna White, and this is my box.
Exactly. And if you actually take the loose one so they can see what it is. So we have these Gen 3 USB. Yeah, you see it? So you have to guess how many of these USBs are in this box.
What would you say the volume of this is?
And the first person to guess without going over, you cannot go over the number, will win the $100 gift certificate. So now's the time if you guys want to start guessing.
And-
Yep, they're coming in now.
And Carrie, you got to tell me, like, if people aren't getting, you know the number, Carrie. So
I know the number, so it'll be the closest person without going over, and you get one guess. So I'm seeing all these numbers come in.
So the bottom.
Nobody's there yet.
The bottom is fairly solid with Gen 3s. The sides, you know, maybe there's maybe 2 layers approximately. This Gen 3 is vertical, so it takes up less space. Yeah. So, and then there's packing peanuts in here. So Carrie made it definitely, you know, a challenge here.
And what would you say the size of this is? Is this like 2 quarts?
Yeah, you know, I'm not good.
I
with
tried
that
to look,
stuff.
and
they
it
don't
doesn't
say.
No.
Can you zoom in on it again, Chris?
Made
I
in
saw you did
China.
before.
So this is like, you know, this is like pasta dinner for 2 people. You know, maybe if you didn't like fill it all the way. Though Joe can sometimes fill up his 3rd leg. So.
So we don't have an exact number yet. I have one person that's really close.
We'll give them some time to work on that.
And this is the size.
Oh yeah,
So
we've
like-
got the representation of the $100 bill.
Everyone knows what a bill size is, so you've got that. And you've got that. If you want to make some volume calculations and estimate the volume of a packing peanut.
You could fit 6 packages of brisk spark plugs with 4 plugs each in there. What do you think?
I'd say that's probably
accurate.
accurate.
You could do that. Yeah.
You might even be able to get 7.
So, Chris, you want to cue up the...
Okay, we have a winner.
Oh,
man.
Sweet.
Philip McGee. Guess 19, and you are correct. So,
Awesome.
Philip, I will send you a message, and
We'll get you that gift certificate.
Oh, Keegan, you came in just too late.
And you can use it to buy a VMP Gen 3 for $19.99 on the website. Holds 16 gigabytes worth of data.
Did anyone else guess the size?
I
guess the
had
number.
Actually, Keegan just responded like right after I said, "Okay, we have a winner."
Should we send him a VMP Gen 3
I
as a
think
runner
Actually,
prize?
Keegan Daly, isn't his car here?
Oh, okay.
We'll put one in the cup holder for Keegan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, those are 16 gig, right?
16 gigabytes.
Yep, and they're, as you can see, a USB drive, Supercharger
Yeah.
computer.
All right, so this is off the table.
So now what do people
$100
want to hear
bill
about?
People want to hear about the Cobra Gen 3. So this is on the dyno at the old shop. It has been like forever between... Did this go on the dyno before I went to Paris or after I went to Paris?
I think it was just after you got back from Paris.
Just after I got from Paris.
Didn't we have like Carlisle or some other
We
event?
had Carlisle, and the dyno, the
And
mobile
then
dyno,
AM.
moved out for 2 weeks, and then
Yep.
AM. So it's been kind of like an evening and weekend
Side project.
And in the meantime, we've been getting all the Cobra Gen 3s in to ship, the instructions, the bolts, the parts, all the little stuff. So Cobra Gen 3s are going to like start shipping like this week or Monday at the latest. And we do have some preliminary dyno results from Rick's car. So Rick's car has been the test mule for the VMP line of Cobra Superchargers since the very beginning. Back in 2010, we hand fabricated an adapter plate.
I was actually here getting my car dyno tuned back in 2010, and I saw that hand fabricated inlet, and I was so excited back then for a TVS blower for Cobras. I was on the original like group buy thread.
Oh wow, that's
Posting.
crazy! Before you even worked here.
Before I even worked there, I brought my black Cobra in like week after I bought it to get it dyno tuned by you.
And I wish I had pictures of that stuff somewhere. I don't even have the parts anymore. I think we threw them away or something. But yeah, made that on the milling machine and the TIG welder. So anyways, Rick's car's been the original test car, and Rick's raced the hell out of the thing since 2006. It got a motor refresh in 2015.
And it cracked a block, which another thread came up about someone with poly engine mounts cracking a block. So my theory is poly engine mounts can crack an iron block.
That is like, yeah, they pull the bores out of alignment and shit gets unhappy.
But not to get you off track.
Yeah. So Rick's car's been the original test car. So there were 2 hand fabricated versions of blowers on his car at various points that made in the 600 to 650 wheel range.
Was that on 93 back then or E85
Yeah,
back
93. Like we cracked 600 with the TVS, I think pretty easily with a prototype TVS. And then we went to the Gen 1. And for all the Cobra people, Gen 1 and Gen 2 Cobra are like very, very similar. They're almost the exact same thing.
In terms of power number at the same IAT, they're probably going to make the same number.
Yeah. Gen 3 for Cobra, just like Gen 3 for everything else we do, is now the much bigger leap with bigger, more efficient rotors. However, that being said, Gen 3 on GT500 and Coyote got a bigger throttle body bolt pattern, got an even bigger inlet. Gen 3 for 03 Cobra kept the same inlet and kept the same bolt pattern to keep the cost reasonable and to keep it easy to install. Because our blowers, my personal opinion, and I think anybody you'd ask that's installed one, are some of the easiest to install on the market. You can access all the bolts. You can still run EGR. So we didn't want to ever deviate from what one of our core competencies and core features was of having a product that's easy to install,
easy to service. You can get to all the plugs.
Yeah,
everything's easy to work on that setup.
Get to your plugs. I mean, because let's be honest, high performance vehicles, they can sometimes require a lot of work. And we've had cars here in the shop. Oh, it needs a plug change. Oh, the supercharger has to come off.
Yep.
Like how effed up is that?
Yeah, it's all types of bad. You got to have some forethought when you're designing these things.
Yeah. So, it was worth it to stick to a common design and make things easy to service. So the Cobra Gen 3 uses the same inlet as the Gen 1 and the Gen 2, and same easy to work on type of features. We have been finding out a lot of things on the dyno though. Definitely, I've been working on this little cold air as a side project for the 03 Cobra. I figure, hey, let's give the thing a bigger cold air since we're going to have the biggest, baddest set of rotors in the thing ever. So we actually tested the rapid prototype plastic one on Rick's car, and it makes more power. And it's not like life or death type of thing, but it's like 5 or 10 more horsepower. And then we played with a bigger mass air housing as well, if you want to cue that picture. We grabbed an off-the-shelf JLT 110 millimeter mass air housing. I don't know that this is what the production kit will end up with. We're actually looking at something around 115 to 120 millimeter. But getting more air into the Gen 3 helps a bunch. Now, through repeated dyno pulls on Rick's car, and anybody that knows Rick knows that this is like the fastest budget Cobra you will ever meet. Literally, the collectors on this thing are rusting out. So I have to be careful where I take my wideband readings. So I get a clean air fuel reading. But one of the limitations we're finding out on this car, and just trying to make this much power, is the intercooler system. You've got to. We are more than doubling the stock horsepower rating. Because what does an 03 Cobra make stock?
390.
Yeah, 390 on a good day. I mean, I've seen them as
low as... Well, that's
as...
crank. They're rated 390 stock.
Yeah.
So 360, 370?
It's 360. We call it 360 rear wheel horsepower for an 03 Cobra. We doubled that with the Gen 2, Gen 1 and Gen 2, and we're taking it even farther with the Gen 3. So the intercooler brick is the smallest one that Ford's ever put in a power adder car of recent history. The heat exchanger's tiny, the intercooler pump is tiny. All Rick has in the car is an ice tank in the back with a Rule 1000 bilge pump, I think.
Do they make a 1000 or is it just the 2? Because I know about the Rule 2000, but...
The bilge pump he's got there, it's literally this big around.
Oh, man.
I know some of the customers' cars here, if they've got an ice tank, they'll usually have like a bilge pump like this big around. So it's a tiny thing. So, one of the things we measured on the dyno was the flow rate of the intercooler system. You want to cue that one? 3.5 gallons per minute. We like to see on something that's going to be shooting for this type of power, 4.5 is what our kits ship with the pump that comes with them. If you're going to be racing the thing a lot and trying to make dyno numbers, I'd like to see 6.5. And Rebecca's car will be getting some new parts where we'll be shooting for like 10 to 20 gallons per minute.
That's crazy.
So I had a video and we were talking about this earlier, at a video of Rick's coolant tank in his ice tank in the back, you can't even see water moving with the pumps on. It's like a dribble. And if you look at Rebecca's tank, even with her current setup, you see everything moving around.
So what you're saying is that it seems that we're finding the limitations of some things on the car?
Yeah, we're finding the limitations of all the associated hardware. I mean, Rick's car has still got 1 5/8 headers. Nobody runs 1 5/8 headers anymore on something that, makes this type of power. So you want to go ahead and cue the dyno graph, the busy dyno graph? Cue the other one. Or I'm sorry, actually previous one. Okay. Green and red are Gen 3 results so far. And keep in mind, Rick's car is stock head, stock camshaft, budget build, 1 5/8 headers. Hanging on by its dear life, but serves Rick well and serves us well on the dyno over these past 10 years.
Compression's only a half a point higher than stock, I think.
Yeah, you actually calculated out to what, 9.2 compression?
I think that's what it was.
Yeah. So this motor has never actually made more than the stock motor. It was just a rebuild because Rick cracked his iron block. It actually went to aluminum block, which is surprisingly stronger.
Yeah, yep. It's doing good so far.
Stock bore 4.6. So these are the results that everybody's been asking for. Keep in mind, it's on a stock head, stock cam budget build. I mean, there have been people that have been making 750, 800 rear wheel on a Gen 2. So, but those cars have been modded to heck. I think Bob Monks was telling me that 1 7/8 headers, in his opinion, are worth 40 rear wheel on this combination.
That's crazy.
So we may have to start a buy Rick a set of headers fund, and get him up there in numbers.
That and standalone, because it seems like the stock ECU is doing some weird stuff at 6,200 RPM there. Because what was the plug gap on that pole?
Actually, we've got Rick's plugs down to 14 to 16 thou.
Just because you had tried them at a higher gap and you lowered gap to see if you were dealing with a spark blowout issue.
Yeah. If Chris, are you able to load that graph and zoom in on one corner of it? If you have to edit it, don't mess with it. But if you can just like bring it up and drag it in, that'll work.
What corner?
Upper right corner. So there's a lot of spark. It looks like spark breakup, blowout. Plug gap doesn't seem to help it. We've kind of always fought with this on the Cobra, and now that we have a very efficient blower that just wants to keep making power, it's kind of a pisser because it's like you're shut down.
It's like if we could spend it to $7,000 and maintain spark or fueling or whatever's going on there, because it looks like misfires from spark, but if we could just maintain spark higher, we could make significantly more power, but we're being stopped around 6,200 RPM.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're up something like 40 foot-pounds, 30 to 40 foot-pounds of torque, and around 30 to 40 rear wheel horsepower. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what was the pulley size when you were doing that?
This was a 3.3 pulley and a 4-pound lower. So literally the largest pulley combination that we make on the upper. And if this was on a stock engine, I wouldn't even run a lower pulley. I'd run maybe a 3.1 or 3.2 upper and a stock lower, and I would go to town. And I don't know how many stock lower Cobras are out there, but if you had one, you wouldn't need to spin them.
Surprisingly, there's still a lot.
There's still a lot.
Yeah, there seems to be more and more threads reoccurring on the Cobra forums where the bushings are dying in the stock caged lower. But I've seen some threads where people are actually replacing the bushings to keep the stock caged lower.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that stock cage lower is designed to do its job and support the crank. And with the Gen 3, I mean, you can make so much boost so easily. I wouldn't see a need like 3.0, 3.1 and let her rip. And we'll be installing a Gen 3 on a stock car here sooner rather than later. Chris, last component of the 03 Cobra is the boost graph that I've got. So basically boost was around 21, 22 pounds. No drop off like the Gen 1, Gen 2 stuff, and plenty of room to grow. The Gen 2 for the Cobra was a great blower, but it was always maxed out. I mean, people were
on
running
these E85 4-pound 3.0 setups,
yeah.
stock cams.
I even have had a surprising number of people tell me they were running a 2.8 upper pulley, and I'm like, you shouldn't do that. That's too much blower speed for the little 2.3 in that situation.
Pressure ratio.
Yeah, at that pressure ratio. So 265 buys us lower RPM to make the same boost, same power, ability to make more power, more efficiency, so lower air temps, and just you got to build the car supporting hardware-wise to make the power. I'm sure Rick's car will make over 800 rear wheel sooner rather than later. And it would be impressive to do it with stock cams if we got some of the other little things figured out on his car. But
and I was gonna say you're gonna catch some flack from the people that'll be like, well, I heard once upon a time that this 4-liter Whipple Cobra made 800, and it's like, what RPM was that at? Was he having the same issues where we were getting spark blowout or some semblance of spark blowout on the dyno? Like, we're working with what we got here. What we got is, what was that, 750?
761.
761 at 52, not 52, but 6,200 RPM.
Yep.
Realistically, we have another 800 RPM we could use. If you drew a trend line, it'd make more power up there. It's not like it's flattening out, but...
We're dealing with all the things of a car that was designed for less than half the horsepower. That is over 15 years old.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say to that point, Joe, is there's a heck of a lot of potential here. So I'm excited to play with it and finally not have a maxed out combination. I mean,
it's going to be exciting.
Rick's been racing this thing for 6 years with a VMP, 7-8 years with the VMP Gen 2, and he's pushed it as far as he can push it. It goes 9.3s with a little bit of spray in perfect weather.
Imagine what that thing would do with an auto.
Yeah.
Not to say that Rick shifts slow, but autos are the be-all, end-all in terms of ET.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, people have gone 8s with a Gen 2 and an auto. You know, this thing I think it would push it another 3 to 5 tenths faster.
That's crazy. Craziness.
Anything else we should add on that? Think we ran through just about everything.
Does anyone want to donate Rick a standalone?
Donate Rick a standalone. Start with the Rick Parts Fund.
Build race car for Rick fund. Rick's good people.
I think we really want some stainless headers on Rick's car that don't rust out, because this is his second set of Mac headers.
It's the second?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I'm pretty sure it's the second set of Mac mild steel 1 5/8 headers.
And it's not even to say anything bad about Mac, but this is an E85 car that gets raced.
In Florida.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
you get water collection and mild steel, and it's going to rust.
Yeah, you get 5, 6, 7 years out of a set of mild steel long tube headers, you're probably doing pretty good.
Someone's asking, how well do these 03 Cobras like a small shot of spray, like a 50 shot?
They love it.
They love it. Yeah, I mean, that's what Rick's car, I think, runs 9.8. The old blower ran 9.8, 9.7 off the spray, and then would go 9.6, 9.5, even 9.3 in perfect weather with like a 70, 80 shot.
Any other questions coming across there, Miss
There's
Carey?
a number of questions here. We're over on time. We could probably run through a few if you want to.
Yeah, let's run through a few real quick, and then we'll
call it a day.
Yeah.
Dave Macy says, have you guys done anything with ForScan for tuning/module tweaking, either for VMP customers or on your own?
I do it with personal stuff, and I'll occasionally use it for customers' cars since we don't currently have an IDS tool. Sometimes there's codes on modules that need reset. Sometimes after dyno work, which is weird because you do, I think if you do enough cycles on the dyno, the ABS stores a hard code.
Oh.
And you'll lose, sometimes, like on 17, sometimes you'll lose power steering, and you'll lose, the ABS will just throw a hard code that'll never come out of unless you delete the code with either an IDS or with ForScan.
Oh, that's why that happens after the dyno?
Sometimes, yeah.
Interesting.
And the common theme with the codes that I get with that is 17 cars. But to answer your question, yeah, I've played with ForScan. Not to be confused with the other.
Oh, well.
That escalated quickly. They should
Yeah.
really think up a different name for that.
Have you had any testing with the 4R200 planetary from Power by the Hour?
I haven't dealt with it.
We haven't messed with it. It sounds badass.
Yeah, based on all the stuff I've seen on it, it works great. So, awesomeness. I've held it in my hands. Frank brought it here on the last episode we did with Alex.
Charles says, how does the 15 to 17 S550 calculate exhaust gas temperatures at the catalytic converters, and what is the solution to over-temp conditions besides dumping excess fuel?
That's the solution.
How does Ford, is he asking how does Ford model it, or how does the ECU calculate it?
Both, I guess. And I mean, I think the short answer is there's a table and there's modifiers, and it says at this load and RPM, this is what cat temperature should be, and then take these modifiers for fuel and spark, right?
And then it calculates EGT based on distance from MBT, air fuel enrichment, the load, the RPM, the duration at load, and the RPM. All that stuff takes effect in that calculation. But I want to say that table in SCT is called like exotherm temp, and it's a
pretty small table.
It's a small table, but like you said, there's a bunch of modifiers for it.
I had an engineer at Ford tell me, he's like, if we just had 50 more C worth of, temperature range on a catalytic converter, life would be so much better. So it's right there at the edge from the factory, and it's just, if you want your cats to live, cool them off. And I will add, there's two definitions to cats that live. There's ones that still work, and there's ones that still are intact.
Yeah.
You can have intact catalytic converters that have the wash coat burned off of them and no longer
function properly.
And you can actually smell, the vehicle smells different.
And so you can have your metal annealed, or you can have it melted.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, there's a few threads on Mustang 6G right now about people losing catalytic converters, and I need to blame my tuner. No, you don't need to blame your tuner, blame Ford, and it seems to be this big back and forth right now. But I've seen multiple catalytic converter failures, and...
Are we talking stock cars or modified cars?
Modified. Heavily modified cars.
Well, and I'll tell you, factory fuel pumps, we push them to the edge, so they might have enough fuel to maintain like 0.8 lambda to safely keep the engine safe, but do they have enough capacity to maintain 0.72 lambda for cap protection? Probably not.
And I know there's a lot of tuners out there that will limit the amount of cap protection that can happen. If you data log a car, fifth gear pole on the highway that starts at 1500 RPM, you should be in cap protection about 3/4 of the way through that pole. If you're not, you're probably going to push a cat eventually.
Too many tuners set up calibrations for off-road X-pipes right from the get-go, and we don't do that. We got to keep all the emissions equipment intact and all the calibration work for it. Hey, Kara, what's the next one?
Jason says, hey guys, Justin, you've dyno tuned my 03 Cobra a couple times now, the last time at Carlisle. It made 632 and 633. No, I'm sorry, 636. It has a VMP Gen 2 TBS, 2.7 pulley, on 93 and Torco with long tubes and a JLT CAI. AccuFab throttle body, but the stock mass airflow sensor and housing with
Mafia.
Yeah.
I was trying to read it because it's red and small. What should my next step be in terms of power? Is there anything to gain by getting rid of the stock MAF housing and installing a sensor directly onto the JLT intake tube? I do not have E85 near me, so that isn't an option. The car made more torque than horsepower, so I'm wondering if I am leaving any power on the table.
Well, once upon a time we had, different set of answers, but the world that we've ventured into lately is camshaft upgrades. Boost goes lower, airflow goes higher, the engine gets essentially more efficient at moving air, at pumping air, which is its job. And if he cannot get E85,
and doesn't want to go down the race gas road.
Yeah.
The only thing really left on the table on pump gas at that point is
camshafts. Yeah, because we can't have you throw boost or just try to throw more air at pump gas, because then we're going to have too much boost. And even with the Torco or the Boostane, we still, there's a limit there. So yeah.
Especially being that Cobras don't have knock sensors. They're not going to try to save themselves, and if you have a loud exhaust and you can't hear detonation, you'll have a bad time.
Yeah.
Mark says, I know it was asked in a previous episode, but I could not find the episode. Who do we have build our engines?
Bum, bum, bum.
We work with L&M quite a bit, and for our in-house projects, we build a lot of our own engines. Rebecca's built her engine. Mike's built a couple of engines. We've got a couple engines going together right now, so.
Yeah.
Richard Roth says 67 Mustang, Gen 2 crate, control pack, CI with twin 67. What tuner do you recommend? N-gauge, SCT, etc.
Either. They'll both get the job done. The tricky thing with control packs is making sure that the tuning company you want to use has that strategy populated. One of those tuning companies cannot force a strategy onto a car, not easily at least. The other one can. So if you have a way to do so, try and figure out what file's currently on there and get with a tuning company and make sure they currently have support for the strategy that's in your ECU.
And we're, as tuners, we're constantly in touch with the tuning company, so you can always, consult with us on that. We can help you out.
Exactly.
Charles says, is it important the AFR matches the lambs?
Depending on which ECU you're referring to, yes. On a 15 to 17, you'll see discrepancies between lambda and measured AFR or lambda, because it says measured AFR, but it's really a calculation of lambda on the stuff that we data log.
Shave your lambs regularly.
Oh, man.
No.
But
sorry,
it's okay. 11 to 14, in a perfect world, you want your lambda to match lambda, or measured AFR. And 15 to 17s, the values don't seem to correlate.
Yeah, lambda in 15 to 17, I think, is a correction amount rather than a commanded amount. So, and the actual is always going to oscillate. That's like normal.
I'm going to take 2 more questions.
2 more questions. That sounds good.
And then we'll call it a day because it's almost quarter till.
Okay.
So another question is, how much is cold air worth on a Cobra? For example, if a car makes 650 to the wheel in 90-degree weather, 90-degree IAT, what could the car make in 30-degree weather, 30-degree IAT? In other words, how much does hot ambient air kill performance?
You got to start getting into dyno corrections at that point. If you're talking about measuring the power the car is making at the back tire, if you're using an SAE correction factor on the dyno, should there be a difference in power when the car is dynoed when it's 90 degrees out and measuring power when the car is dynoed when it's 30 degrees out?
There shouldn't be, but in actuality, I've found the correction factors do not work well enough.
They're a good rule of thumb, but they're not precise.
And if you look at the uncorrected numbers and run the car in each of those conditions, even on a 650 wheel car, I mean, it would be something like 50 wheel at 30 degrees.
Yeah.
And you look at the track times and how much faster we can run ET-wise in the winter than we can in the summer. I will tell you, though, the faster the car gets, the smaller that variation becomes. But
the other interesting point about that is that the dyno's Atmo does not calculate what your inlet air temp is. So say, because that's what it's actually trying to correct for, is what the inlet air temp is. But if your filter's in the engine bay and it's sitting on the dyno and your IAT1's 130 degrees, your Atmo on the dyno's calculating for 90 degrees that the engine's ingesting, when that's not really what the engine's ingesting. And
I also feel like there's no way for the dyno correction factor to calculate how much more efficient the turbo or the supercharger is with colder, denser air. So,
yeah, because turbos kind of do weird stuff with dyno correction factors, elevation and stuff wise.
Yeah. The last question, Carrie?
The last question is, what plug-in gap is recommended for the Cobra Gen 3 E85?
So, with that system and that computer and the age of that, I don't think you can go wrong going small. Just avoid problems. I mean, heck, when I was on the dyno yesterday, we had to change plugs.
Oh man.
And but 25 thou, you think you want to say?
I think that is the
minimum.
The maximum.
Maximum.
So you want to see that as the maximum value. You'd want to go. You can go down from there, but I would not go above 25.
Yeah, 20 to 25 thou. When we start talking about boost levels, 20 being the 18 to 20 being entry level for a Cobra, and Gen 3 should be able to push 25, 27.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go down 16, be at that 25, 27 level.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there we go.
Cool. Thanks everybody for watching. Episode 31 was great. We'll do it again next week.
Like,
And
share, subscribe.
What's the name of that guy that won?
Hold
The guy that's here. What's his name?
Philip McGee.
Philip
The guy
McGee.
that's here, his car's here is Keegan.
Keegan?
I think it's Keegan.
I'm going to go put this in your car.
Oh, damn. So Keegan gets a Gen 3 TVS, and Philip gets a $100 gift card to the VMP store.
Yep.
Oh, damn.
Thanks for playing, everybody. Let us know what you want us to talk about next week. Like, subscribe, and share the show with your friends.
All the things. And if you wanted to see a recent video of a Gen 3 TVS, go check out Cletus McFarland's YouTube channel. He's got a whole build with one of our Gen 3 TVSs on a GT500 engine and a Panther platform car, which I love.
Hell yeah, brother.
Speaks to my heart.
Let's go get some Bartle Skeet.
Oh boy.